I want to give you my indecisive help on the Collins Loeffler race. I say it because, listen, here's the problem. I told the governor I would support Kelly Loeffler. And so I voted for Kelly Loeffler on my absentee ballot. And I really like Doug Collins a lot. And I think every member of my family is voting for Doug Collins because I love Doug Collins. Doug Collins and I talk all the time. And I wish he hadn't gotten in the race. And I told him as much because I promised the governor I'd support Kelly Loeffler. And I think if I promise the governor I'm going to support Loeffler, I got to support Loeffler. And listen, I think Loeffler hasn't done anything wrong. And she's been a good senator. She hasn't given me a reason to oppose her. And if she wins, she'll have 2 more years to kind of stand on her own 2 feet and prove herself. And if she doesn't, particularly, let's say Joe Biden wins, you'll get the character of the person in office when they start trying to collaborate with Democrats or not. And we'll be able to see. And so I voted for Loeffler. She's done nothing wrong. I think she has earned the right to 2 more years. And if she doesn't fulfill in 2 years being a good senator, well, then let's get Doug Collins to run against her again. And if Collins wins, listen, there's going to be a runoff. We know for certain there's going to be a runoff. The Democrats can't get to 50 plus 1. And I think particularly if Biden wins the presidency, it'll suppress Democratic enthusiasm for the runoff, and that'll help whoever the Republican is. But I really like Doug Collins, and I am all of you. We are all in this together. All of us are. Who should I vote for? And Collins or left. I don't care. They're both great. They're both fine. And I hate not voting for Doug. But had I not promised the governor and said so on radio, I would have voted for him. Everybody else in my family is voting for him. And he may just win, by the way. Collins is moving up. He waited until the end to go negative on Loeffler. He made it about the insider trading stuff in Washington, and it's having an impact in the polling. Let me vent my frustration a little bit on the Loeffler campaign, and I know the guys who run the Loeffler campaign, and I know why they're doing it. Let me explain, just to back up here. Kelly Loeffler is an unknown. She is not known to Georgians. She is very much, I didn't back Purdue in 2014, and the reason I didn't back Purdue in 2014 is because whenever I hear about these rich CEOs going to Washington, they generally are pretty terrible. And so I just thought, I don't know this Purdue guy. I know he's Sonny's cousin. Sonny was a little more moderate than I would have wished. Former Democrat who became a Republican. Nice guy. Look, I love Sonny, but he wasn't the conservative that I am. He's certainly headed in that direction over time, but I wasn't sure, so I didn't back David, and I really got that one wrong, and I've been campaigning for him ever since. I am a David Perdue fan. I absolutely am a David Perdue fan. I love the guy. I wish we could keep him in the Senate forever. He is such a good senator. And so with Loeffler, she's got a background in finance. She's from Southern Illinois. She was with a WNBA team, and the WNBA is liberal, and so that's raised a lot of eyebrows. It's provided Doug Collins an attack. The WNBA, along with the Atlanta team, I can never remember the team's name, the Dream or whatever, the Nightmare maybe, they did a fundraiser, or they gave money to Planned Parenthood. Loeffler apparently was opposed to it, but she got overruled. And they're running an attack on this, and it's fair game. I mean, Stacey Abrams stood on the court with her and hugged her, but she's also hugged. Stacey Abrams has hugged everybody. Hugged Doug Collins, hugged Kelly Loeffler. They're using these pictures against each other. So Loeffler, given that background, has had to define herself as an unknown person with a background in areas where conservatives generally are not. And so she's done it by the stupid Attila the Hun ad. Y'all, I think it's a dumb ad. I'm sorry. I think it's stupid. I think the ad is silly. It's like the Michael Williams immigration bus ad. I think it's dumb. But she's had to do this. It feels like she's had to do this in a way to show that she really is a conservative, show that she really does support the president, show that she really isn't just for show. And these things do matter. And because they matter, They matter in ways that are hard to pick up in polls to show voter loyalty or sympathy or empathy to these candidates. Doug Collins doesn't have to do what Kelly Loeffler did because Doug Collins has been on Fox News regularly defending the president. Doug Collins has been in the Judiciary Committee defending the president. Doug Collins has taken stand against the impeachment in the House of Representatives. Doug Collins has been in the Judiciary Committee. I said Senate, House of Representatives. He's been all over this stuff. Doug Collins has shown himself to be a defender of the president. Doug Collins has shown himself to be a conservative. Now, Doug Collins is not a House Freedom Caucus guy. Doug Collins has never been the rabid conservative policy-wise that, for example, a Jody Hice has been here in Georgia. But he's a good guy, and he votes the right way. That is why I understand so many people are torn between these two candidates. Now, Herschel Walker has come out and endorsed Kelly Loeffler. He did so over the weekend. He's running ads for her at the end of the race for Kelly Loeffler to try to persuade people to help her. That may or may not help her. I suspect it will pick her up some votes at the margins. She's been to all the Georgia games. She had a picture up on Instagram of being at the Georgia-Alabama game. That game. Anyway, but, Collins has not had to define himself because he's already defined. To the extent that the Loeffler campaign has tried to redefine Collins, they're trying. But here's my problem. This gets to my issue with the Loeffler campaign. If I'm really honest about it, look, I don't keep anything from y'all. And her campaign knows how I feel. I just don't like the ads that she's run. And I think, if anything, Doug Collins has been able to define himself as his own man, even as a defender of the president. And Loeffler has had to essentially wrap herself in the embrace of the president to show that she's one of us. The result is that as they head into a runoff, people know Doug Collins already. And frankly, there are a lot of Democrats out there who like Doug Collins behind the scenes because he was in the state legislature in Georgia. Loeffler is still largely an unknown. And I got to say this, and I mean this lovingly. And I want to put it out there like that. I mean this lovingly. Every time I talk to Kelly Loeffler, when she talks off the top of her head about issues, she's brilliant. She is a savvy, very smart person. When she talks about the stuff her campaign has prepared her for or her staff has prepared her for, she comes across as not very authentic and very stiff. And I hear this on the campaign trail from a lot of people, that she comes across as wooden, stiff, and inauthentic, and Collins comes across as personal and very authentic. Now, if Loeffler lets her guard down and she starts talking about stuff she knows about, she's really smart. And I continue to come back to an example. When she first got elected and would come on the show, her staff would reach out to Charlie, my producer, and say, what's he going to talk about? And, of course, Charlie would kind of outline it, but he's always very clear. We don't give away the questions, but these are the topics in general that we're going to talk about. And with Loeffler, every time she's come on, I've made the point of asking her about stuff that we didn't tell her staff. And every single time, without question, the stuff she's done the best on has been the stuff where she just talked. She didn't know the question was coming, and she talked. And one of them in particular was on moral hazard. Now, I'm not an economist, I'm not a finance guy, but let me give you a little bit of an overview here. With moral hazard, when the government continues to prop up companies that should be allowed to collapse, what you do is you create a moral hazard where those companies continue to do the bad things in anticipation of future government bailouts. One of the problems we have with the virus and the government stimulus programs during the virus is that we have incentivized companies that should go under and should be bankrupt right now to stay afloat. That includes banks and financial institutions. And as a result of this, the banks and financial institutions are increasingly dependent on the government, but not just dependent on the government. They expect the government to bail them out in the future. And that is going to forestall economic pain in this country that we should be dealing with right now. And instead, in the future, we're setting ourselves up for a financial collapse. And I asked Loeffler about this. This has been months ago now. And let me give you her answer in a nutshell. She was not prepared. She didn't know I was going to throw this at her. And I explained, I said, I've talked to a number of friends of mine who are in finance in New York. That's your background. And they're all worried about us setting ourselves up for future economic collapse because the government, through the stimulus plan, is right now propping up businesses that have no business being propped up. And she immediately said, it's called moral hazard. That's what you're talking about. And you're absolutely right. That's what the government is doing. It's what all of us voted for. And the reason is because we cannot right now, during this pandemic, figure out who's deserving, who's not deserving, who should collapse, and who should survive. Right now, we need everybody to survive, and we're going to have to deal with this. It's going to be a problem. But you can't have Congress right now trying to pick winners and losers in a global pandemic. And you know what? She's absolutely right. And the problem is, what I gather on the Loeffler side of things is that her staff wants her to just keep talking. And Loeffler is smart enough, it only takes her 10 words to say what a typical politician takes 100 words to say. And her sentences, when she goes off script, when she goes unprepared, her sentences are short and to the point. And when her staff gets her worked up on stuff, she just rambles. Because that's what staff in Washington expect a politician to do. Loeffler, meanwhile, kind of knows what she wants to say. And when she goes off script to an unprepared topic, she goes immediately to what she wants to say. And she's been good every single time. And to the extent that I wish her campaign could do one thing, it would be to just let her be herself. She comes across as very inauthentic on the campaign trail. She comes across as very stiff. And behind the scenes, this is a smart person. You do not get to where she was and where she is without being a smart and savvy person. To the extent people say, oh, well, it's just her husband. Baloney. This is her. And I have been deeply impressed one-on-one with her on every occasion. And so I'm voting for Loeffler, but I'm voting for her largely because I promised the governor. I think she's done nothing wrong to have herself fired from office. And I hate it because I really like Doug Collins. And had I not promised the governor and not said what I've said so far, I would vote for Doug Collins. And so I get those of you who are torn between the two. I totally get it. I think Collins has run a better campaign with better ads. I think he's a personable, authentic person on the campaign trail, and she's not. But I know behind the scenes she is. And I know behind the scenes she's smart. And I know behind the scenes she's fighting for conservative policy. So I'll go with Loeffler, but I don't fault anybody for going with Collins. The guy's brilliant. I like the guy a lot. My whole family, I think, is going to vote for Doug Collins. I don't blame him at all. I can't fault him for that. So if you're trying to tell me tell you who to vote for, I can't in this because they're both great. I will tell you this. I don't think that the Democrats can get 50%. And so we'll decide between Loeffler and Collins who goes into the runoff.